So going back to human design, where when I first discovered it and I realized how much it helped me personally and professionally, I was thinking to myself, how can I implement this in corporate America or any corporate environment? Because I feel like this would be so helpful for individuals at home and at work.
This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast where we talk to human resources innovators about innovation in the world of HR. If you're a people leader or you're looking for a new way to think about how to help others be successful, this is the podcast for you. Rebel on, HR Rebels. All right, Rebel HR listeners, extremely excited for today's podcast guest. We're going to be talking about something that we have not talked about before, human design. And with us today, we have Patricia Karam. Patricia is the CEO and founder of Atlanta-based Mission Recruit. She's the driving force introducing human design to corporate America. With more than a decade of experience working with Fortune 500 companies nationwide, she launched Mission Recruit with the vision of delivering best-in-class services by combining the sophistication of a large recruiting company with the heart and personalization of a smaller staffing agency. Her background in the industry started with corporate recruiting career, global leader in the IT staffing industry. She's done national staffing, positions in strategy and philanthropy. She's got a strong entrepreneurial spirit as a result of her parents' influence, immigrants from the Philippines who taught her that life's most important lessons and, above all, the significance of giving back. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle. What a great opening. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited for today's show, and we were having a discussion before I hit record, and I've got so many questions that we're going to get into. So why don't we start with kind of the big question? So help us understand, what is human design?
Great question, and I'm glad we're getting right into it. Human design is a personality assessment. So it's not like your normal Myers-Briggs or anything like that. It is taking the Eastern and Western practices, principles, and science and combining it to create your own personal human design assessment. And there are 5 types. There's generator, manifestor, manifesting generator, projector, and reflector. And so I've intentionally partnered with an HR professional who specializes in human design, and she has experience implementing this in her corporate environment. So it's something I'm so excited about, and it's one of our main pillars, keeping the human in HR through human design.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I had an opportunity to take the assessment. I'm looking through it, and I'm like, I'm just really fascinated about this approach. But before we dive into that, I want to understand, what led you to pursue this approach as it relates to recruiting and kind of looking at individuals' skills and strengths.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when I first came across human design, after I understood what my design type is, which is a projector, everything in my life kind of made sense. So growing up, I was kind of seen as shy or introverted, but the whole time I'm just waiting for the invitation. It's not that I didn't want to speak. It's not that I didn't want to raise my hand. The way projectors are is they wait for the invitation. And then also just knowing when you're on track or off track, those kind of indicators made a huge difference personally and professionally. So I truly believe in human design because it can help you individually, working with other people, working with your family. So for me personally, when I'm on track, I feel success. So I feel like I'm being successful. When I'm off track, I'm bitter. And so once I realized that, I was just thinking to myself, this would totally be so helpful in the corporate environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's okay. So let's dive into it a little bit. So this is a new assessment for me, and first of all, warning for everybody, I totally nerd out on this stuff. Like, this is just really interesting to me, and I'm like a student of psychology, and so like the DISC assessment and the predictive index, McQuaig, whatever assessments you're using, they tend to be very, maybe not exactly the same, but very similar in approach and methodology. And this is not like that. So I'm looking through my type, and I'm curious about the difference between the types, and then how does that fit in the world of corporate America?
That's a really good question. And you speaking about the other assessments, I also wanted to mention that this is not an assessment where you're answering questions and maybe you're answering it because your leader or company expects a certain answer, or maybe 5 to 10 years from now, your answers will be completely different. This is something that will be the same throughout your whole life, and you can't change the answers to it. But to answer your question, I feel like will be very helpful in the corporate environment, because we will do group sessions, like team sessions for human design. And it will start out with a leader where they understand their human design and how the different types interact with each other. So maybe you're in a group meeting and somebody's sitting back, not speaking up, and you're wondering, are they interested? Do they want to be involved? They could be a reflector, which a reflector by nature is there to observe and see everything fold together. So it's just understanding the different types. Generators, manifesting generators, and manifestors have all the energy. They like to speak up. They're, always doing things. So you are a manifesting generator, and it makes sense because you have your podcast. You are a leader. You do see the big picture. So I think it'd be so helpful for leaders and teams to know and understand each other, because, somebody could say, oh, they're a projector. That's why we need to tap them and ask them for their opinion. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the way that the assessment works is it's based upon, you can't fudge the answers. It's based upon biographical detail. And so, I think that was a really interesting comment that, a lot of times we take these assessments and we answer in the way we think that our organization wants us to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember, it's interesting. I think everybody would agree that I'm an extrovert. I mean, that's just who I am. But I remember distinctly when I started taking these assessments, I assumed that people wanted me to be an extrovert, but naturally I do a lot of things that are very introverted, and, but my persona at work is an extrovert, like beyond, off the scale. But I think it was a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, honestly. Early in my career, I told myself I needed to be that to be a good HR person. And then I just kept saying that, and eventually I kind of became that. So what's interesting is that this is this can't be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just is what it is. So
yeah, exactly.
So I guess I want to ask the question. So as we think about our, kind of team dynamics and some of the things that you talked about how the different, profiles interact, what that kind of sounds like to me is, similar to what a lot of the conversation is around the world right now about, like, bringing your authentic self to work and being, being your true, kind of your true self. So is that really kind of what we're getting at here, that people are who they are as opposed to who you think they should be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another reason why human design hit home for me as an example was early in my career in staffing, people would always tell me, Patricia, you're too nice. Patricia, you're too happy. And then I changed. I became a BITCH. I just completely changed my persona based on that feedback. And at that moment was the moment I started losing clients. And so it goes back to your authenticity. Once I realized my human design, I looked back at that very moment. And if I had been myself, I would have still been doing well and not losing clients at that point in time. So I think it's so true, your human design type is who you are at home and who you are at work. And I think that this is a way to keep the human in HR in the corporate environment, what motivates people, what will motivate people from not leaving, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the other thing, what you just described there, it's an interesting corollary. I'm looking at the different types right now, and the way that the assessment comes out, it says it tells you what you're motivated by, and it tells you you're off track when, and then it gives you an example. So, yeah, so what you just described is it is essentially being off track, then, right?
Exactly. I was bitter. So that's why I think this would be so helpful in the corporate environment. So especially leaders, so they can see when their team members are, not themselves, or how to motivate them better. And also, as a team collaboration, I feel like this is just a different way to collaborate.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. So I know there's probably some people listening to this that have been through all of the certifications, and they've heard all the spiel. So what do you say to the detractors that are saying, like, well, this is just another personality profile, and we'll take the assessment. People will think, oh, that's interesting, and then shove it in their desk drawer and do nothing with it. So what's your response to that?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that this is meant for people, this is meant for everyone. But if there are people who are not as interested or excited about it, that's okay. I would just ask for an open mind. And if they're still not interested, then there will be people who are, and that will impact them personally and professionally. And that's what's most important to me, is how we can impact people through human design. So yeah, but that's a really great point. And that's something that I am expecting some feedback in. So I don't think everyone will absolutely love it, knock on the door and say, I want my assessment. But I think it's something that will truly impact the right people if they do the practices, if they can be open enough for feedback and make changes as you go, if that makes sense. So it's not something where they have to practice. It's just something in their everyday lives saying, oh, I think I'm getting better right now. Maybe I should do something else and not be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just so I can maybe understand this a little bit more. So, as I'm reflecting on human design, to me, it almost sounds like it's kind of a combination of like East meets West, a little bit, where it's like the kind of the energy and I don't know if this is the right term, but chi, and then like the kind of the maybe the science of business and psychology and kind of interpersonal interactions and things like that. So how do those two things come together, and how do you bridge that gap?
That is a really great question, and that's something that my human design partner can speak to better. Her name's Kaja, and I specifically chose her because she does have that experience with HR and human design and the science behind it. So I can't technically speak behind that, but that is a piece that I love about it, that I absolutely love about human design.
Absolutely. So let's take a step back, and I'm just curious to I'm gonna maybe be a little bit selfish, and I have some questions about my profile. So can I ask you? Okay.
Of course.
All right. Like I said, I like this stuff. So this is I'm a manifesting generator, and so as you look at like building out a team, and you look at like team hiring, how do you use this tool to structure? Okay, I have 2 manifesting generators on a team. Can you have too many? Are you trying to find balance? What is the goal as it relates to this approach?
So I think it's healthier to look at human design at a current team dynamic, because I don't ever want anyone to feel like they're being discriminated against because there are too many manifesting generators, or there are too many projectors. But I believe a nice balance is helpful. Sometimes when you can have you, for example, manifesting generator, 2 very strong people maybe if you understand that you're both manifesting generators, you can work together more collaboratively. But I don't think it's a pro or a con. I think it's nice to have a healthy balance, if that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the other, some of the other interesting things. So, there's a leadership archetype, challenge solver. That's kind of cool. I mean, that sounds nice. I like that. And then there's a signs you're on the right path and signs you're on the wrong path. So we could talk about the right path, but let's go negative here. This is an HR show. So a lot of times we're dealing with the negative side of it. So, this spoke to me. This was really interesting. So, it asked me the question, do I feel frustrated? Do I have resentment towards a project or a teammate? And what triggers the emotion? And then how can I pivot? So it asks me those questions as I'm reflecting on the survey results. And I think what was interesting about reading this is when I am not motivated, it's because I'm doing something that I don't enjoy, which I think most people probably feel that way.
Yeah.
But my emotional reaction is frustration. And in general, and typically at work, I can't show that. So I it's like you compartmentalize it and then, you have to get it out somehow. Yeah. So for me, it's like compulsive exercise, or maybe a shorter temper at home with the kids. So how do you use this tool to help employees or teammates understand how to pivot?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And when it's them working on themselves, I think they should do exactly that. Ask themselves these questions when they feel like they're off track. But I think as a leader, I think this is so key in having an open office communication style where people feel comfortable enough to tell you when they are frustrated and how can they fix that. We're dealing with the Great Resignation right now. Of course, I think leaders should definitely focus on this and understand their team and know when they feel like they're off track.
And now, a word from our sponsors. When Molly, Patrick, and I started to figure out how to start our own podcast, we didn't know where to start. Thankfully, we found Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout makes it super easy for us to upload our episodes, track our listeners, and get listed on all the major podcast networks. Today's a great day to start your own podcast. I know that you're one of our listeners, so you've definitely got something to say. Whether you're looking for a new marketing channel, have a message you want to share with the world, or just think it would be fun to have your own talk show, podcasting is an easy, inexpensive, and fun way to expand your reach online. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories within minutes of finishing your recording. Podcasting isn't that hard when you have the right partner, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. And now, for listeners of Rebel HR, you can get a $20 Amazon gift card sent to you from Buzzsprout by clicking in the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Are you looking to grow your personal brand or your business brand? Take it from me that podcasts are a great way to do it. Here's the secret. We all want to feel connected to the brands that we buy from. What better way to humanize a brand than through sharing your personal story on a podcast? I have had great success with Kitcaster. Kitcaster is a podcast booking agency that specializes in developing real human connections through podcast appearances. And let me tell you, it's all about the right human connection. You can expect a completely customized concierge service from their staff of communication experts. Kitcaster is your secret weapon in podcasting for business. Your audience is waiting to hear from you. For a limited time offer, listeners to the Rebel HR podcast can go to www.kitcaster.com/rebel to get a special offer for friends of the podcast. Rebel on. I think that's a challenge for a leader because a lot of times people aren't comfortable, being open and honest when they are frustrated or they're feeling like this is not a project for me, or this is, like they feel like they can't, vocalize that. So, can human design be used to help, bridge that gap and build those relationships? Is that also kind of the approach here?
I truly believe, yeah, that's a really great point, and I truly believe it can, because I think by having these conversations, understanding your human design, and in the workshops, I know Kasia will go deep into this. What ways you can work with each other when you are off track, and how um, to continue motivating through each individual's motivators. So I think that having this conversation will definitely help people be more open to each other and understand each other, and maybe help them put their guard down, honestly. And I think that's how it should be from the leadership seat and also from the team.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And so used to having everything in front of them right away that we forget that innovation just takes time. I myself, I get frustrated too. Why? And you know, this is being one of my best friends is, hey, I talk to you all the time. Hey, man, I'm frustrated in the fact that I can't seem to just get there in the next day. But that's just not how these things work, right? Innovation needs to be planned out. It needs to be very methodical. And then when it finally hits, that's when it seems like to everyone else that it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to you, you know the amount of dedication that it took over that time.
Good. So I'm curious to maybe step back a little bit and understand a little bit more about, Mission Recruit, and when you bring this type of approach into the work that you do there.
Yeah. At Mission Recruit, we are woman owned and minority owned certified. And we have three pillars. Our main pillar is our bread and butter, which is staffing and recruiting. We have Fortune 500 clients, medium sized clients. So best in class recruiting is key for us. Second is placements that give back is our motto. We're very big on giving back. We specifically support partnership against domestic violence and frontline response, which deals with human trafficking. So for every placement we make, we donate $100 to each organization. And then our third pillar is exactly this, keeping the human in HR through human design. And to answer your initial question, so going back to human design, where when I first discovered it and I realized how much it helped me personally and professionally, I was thinking to myself, how can I implement this in corporate America or any corporate environment? Because I feel like this would be so helpful for individuals at home and at work. And I think that especially now with the current landscape we're in, with everyone being remote or not, here or there, a lot of people are dealing with technologies, issues, sickness, whatever. I think that this will help bring a team back. So at Mission Recruit, we offer people to purchase their human design assessment on the website, but we're really interested in doing workshops. So team workshops, and this can be all virtual for now until things kind of clear up. But Kasia will be the one leading those workshops where she will work individually with a leader and then get the whole team together to do a whole team workshop where each person will receive their individual human design analysis.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, so we've talked a little bit about, signs that you're on the wrong path, and I certainly, can relate to that. And it's interesting. If I reflect on my career, there are a few situations where my leading indicator was would have been my fiance at the time, was like, "You're miserable. Like, why are you so?" And I didn't even realize that I was just kind of plowing through, work, and it wasn't great. Ultimately, ended up changing companies and found something that was more enjoyable for me to do. But that makes sense as I think about, the signs that you're on the wrong path, and kind of just how I'm wired. So let's shift gears to signs you're on the right path. So, okay. So as a manifesting generator in your ideal environment, your team is reminding you when to play and when to work, honoring when you say no, and trusting that when it's a yes, you're unstoppable and everyone will benefit. Ultimately, you thrive when you are allowed to be in your own process. So it's really funny because early in my career, and this was a Fortune 50 company. Like, we were going through this leadership development class, and one of the things that they told me, one of the biggest pieces of feedback, is don't forget to have fun. Like like like
Mm-hmm.
like calm down, have a little bit of fun. Like, you don't have to like you don't
Be
have to
so
like plow
serious.
everything out of the way just
Yeah.
to get something done. And but that's just so it's funny that that's come up again, that your team's reminding you when to play and when to work. But for me, like, I and my friends think I'm crazy, but like, for me, work is fun. Like this is what,
Mhm.
like, I enjoy this. Like, it's problem solving. It's like a big crazy Rubik's cube, and it's just, you're just trying to put all the pieces, in the right spot,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's never over, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I kind of drive people crazy in that regard. But it's definitely, when I'm in the flow, I definitely feel that. So, regardless of what your profile is, are there commonalities between the different profiles? Like, does everybody kind of have the same satisfaction or the same feeling of contentment when they're on the right path, or do people actually have different feelings when they're on the right path by the profile type they are?
Yeah, I think people have different feelings if they're on the right path based on your type. And, that could look different in small ways. But I think that overall, everyone has different motivators.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that's one of my personal blind spots sometimes, is I can assume that other people, when things are going well, they feel the same way I do about it. Right? Like, they
Hmm.
get more excited and they're like, "Yeah, this is great. Like, oh, this is a big hairy goal, but we're going to do it, and that's fun." And like, "Yeah, let's rah rah." And but I'm thinking about my personal team right now. Currently, they're not always as excited as I am when we when we're when we're tackling these problems and like plowing through, like and figuring out solutions. And there's a little bit more skepticism, and they're not always on the same page. And that's one of the things I struggle with as a leader sometimes,
Hmm.
is approaching that. So that's a really interesting insight. So it's just so new. This is just a new kind of a
I know.
new
We need to
thing
connect you
for me.
with Tasha.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll have all the information in the show notes as well. So if any other HR professionals have any interest in this, I think I guarantee you there's going to be some that are going to be really curious to learn a little bit more. So I'm curious. So, you know, your focus on mission recruit and female leadership, philanthropy. What prompted you to really work in an organization that has those as the pillars?
Yeah, so I think that the 10 plus years in staffing I've been in, I've seen everything, what worked, what didn't work, what I think would be better. And after I gave birth to my third child, I turned in my notice and I started Mission Recruit, and I haven't looked back. But I basically just implemented everything that I was passionate about because it's a company I created. And so why not bring in things that I could make an impact. My intention is to be impactful, whether it is placing the best in class candidates at my client sites or giving back to the nonprofits, and definitely keeping the human in HR, because I think now everyone being remote, we forget about that, and we forget about people have personal lives, and how do we help them in the professional world too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think, I don't know if you felt this in your business, but in the world of HR, I mean, it's almost like 2020 kind of woke up a lot of leaders
Oh yeah.
that were surprised about some of the challenges that their employees face, or some of the
Mm-hmm.
the actual, like, real world started to trickle into the workplace a little bit, and there
Yep.
wasn't this dividing line between coming into the office and wearing your business casual, and making like completely non impactful small talk by the water cooler, to literally being in someone's home in a meeting and seeing their kid or their dog on camera,
Exactly.
or seeing that they're, you know what, they were running late, they got 3 hours of sleep last night, they're still in their pajamas, you know, the accidental cameras that are on that shouldn't be on, you know, it's like,
Yes.
you know, we've seen it all. Like,
Yeah.
we could probably write an HR novel about all the, you
Yeah.
know, the Zoom mishaps. But I think what it's woken up, at least in my organization, is a little bit of a curiosity. And how do we, you know, how do we support our team where they're at?
Hmm.
Um, and then how do we, you know, it's kind of a slippery slope. Like, it's like we want people to be authentic at work to a certain point. We also don't want to
Right.
be prying into their personal lives and be so
Exactly.
focused on like all the. So I view this, that, you know, to me, this almost sounds like this could be kind of maybe a meeting in the middle kind of an approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, I think about this age of mental health and how it impacts people's personal life is showing up at work, and how can we help employees? How can we help teams? So you're exactly right about that. I feel like it is a really great middle ground.
And I'm assuming that, you know, as I look at this assessment and I reflect on my personal experience, if we tie this back to mental health in the workplace, if you're on the wrong track, eventually that's going to lead to burnout and
Mhm.
potentially mental health issues if
Right.
somebody does that over the course of their career. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, and I think that human design helps with awareness. So people may not even realize what the core issue is, but if you think about these questions, then and if people take the time and they're open to being by themselves and like really truly reflecting, I think this will be so helpful. Truly.
All right. So we've talked about manifesting generators because that's me, and I'm like being selfish and just asking these questions about myself.
I know you
So
should.
you're a projector, and so
I
you
am
meant,
a
so
projector. Yes.
what is your pattern? What is your profile?
Yeah. So
Lead to
projectors are known to wait for the invitation. So for somebody to ask us our opinion, or somebody to ask us for help, or to lead this. And then I am off track when I'm bitter, and I'm on track when I feel success
Interesting.
as a
So,
projector. Hmm.
and I'm looking at it, says motivated by finding patterns to optimize something that already exists.
Exactly. That's why I created Mission Recruit. That's exactly what I was saying when I was kind of going over the company and why I built it. It's everything that didn't work that I saw, and adding in things that I'm passionate about and things that do work. And I'm
Interesting.
loving it. Haven't looked back.
Interesting. Okay. So, do you mind if I want to dive into some of the other patterns, because I have a feeling some of our listeners may find themselves fitting into those
Yeah, and I
categories.
also need to send you the link because people can actually generate their own human design type by going to this website that I'll send you
Perfect.
later if you want to add to the show notes, and they could just kind of
Perfect. We
Google
will
their
have
type.
that. We will have that in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll walk through these really quick. So, generators. What are generators?
Generators, they have the energy, and I have to defer to my human design partner, Kaja. But generators, they have the energy. They want to do. They see what they want to do, and they do it. So they have just great energy to implement, to do, and to achieve.
Got it. Okay. Next question. So, how long have you been kind of doing this type of work with corporations?
Staffing,
Like the human
human
design,
design.
like kind of the, you know,
Oh,
that kind
no,
of.
yeah, that's a really great question. I recently just relaunched our website last month, and so this is a brand new thing.
Got it.
This
Got
is
it.
a brand new thing that we are implementing, and I think we're going to be doing our first workshop next month. Very
Okay.
excited about it.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are you curious about as you kind of launch this and start to explore this in the corporate world? What are your where's your curiosity at?
Oh, I'm very interested to see how it will impact people and the response. So I'm expecting some people not to be so interested, but I'm truly excited to see the people who can recognize the areas that they can improve on and change just in everyday life. It's not something that they have to set time apart to work on it. It's just something that they have awareness and then have intentions to improving.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. Yeah. I'll be curious to see. I'm sure there's going to be some skeptics.
Yeah,
And you have those anytime you do anything like this.
of course.
So
Anything that's different, right?
absolutely. So do you have any like a target audience that you're looking at? Is it a specific industry, or are you viewing this a little bit more open ended?
It's to me, it's anyone and everyone. To me, you don't have to work in a specific industry. To me, being a human is being a human, and I think you can incorporate human design in your everyday life.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking. The the questions from my engineering team would be pretty plentiful, but
I know,
the
and
sales team
I
would probably like,
specialize in IT also.
yeah,
So
yeah. They're going to be sitting there going, okay, what's the algorithm here? This
exactly.
this isn't ones and zeros. This doesn't make sense to me, right? Like
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
bridge that gap. I could see that being a challenge especially with kind of the corporate, the corporate side of the coin
Oh
here. So
yeah, I know.
yeah, people who
I
are
think if
like, yeah,
anything, it'll be fun. It'll be a really fun team activity.
yeah.
If,
Yeah, it's really interesting. To me, it reminds me of, we had a podcast episode, and it was about energy healing as it relates to HR practitioners, with a gal named Sam Smeltzer, she's pretty exceptional. But it was, trying to kind of dispel this feeling of like, kind of like foo foo. That's the word she used,
yeah,
like the things that maybe aren't like generally seen in the corporate environment, but trying
right.
to bring those together. So how are you kind of addressing that, maybe that tendency for a business environment to feel like, oh, this is kind of like, fuzzy, and like, like a warm fuzzy, as opposed to like hard business impact.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need. That's what I think that we have been, if talking about energies, I think like 90s, 2000s, we've been very masculine. And I think it's time to kind of bridge that gap and have equal energies of masculine and feminine. Not everything is go, 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 go business. I think we do have to set time aside to work on ourselves and be better versions of ourselves and understanding that through human design, if that makes sense.
Yeah, now that's really interesting perspective. I'm just reflecting, the word, or the term, masculine, as it relates to like corporate culture. I certainly, I've seen that, but I've also, like, for the first 10 years of my career, all of my leaders were female. But when I had my first male leader, it was very different. Very,
Yeah.
but I feel like that gave me a really great perspective on, what type of leadership works. And, it gave me kind of a broader view on leadership and human resources in general. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting call out, especially as we look at our organizations and US business culture in general, right? Or
Right.
global business culture. I mean, a lot of times the masculine energy is the kind of the primary energy that you see.
Yeah. And when I say masculine energy, I'm also referring to, you know, the concept of living to work versus working to live, or working from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's a very masculine feel, like just doing, doing, doing. But when are you going to have your self-care and all that fun stuff?
Yeah.
So it doesn't get to mental illness.
Yeah. I find I have to be very intentional as we think about, some of those types of programs in my world, where I have to think about the language that I use so that it doesn't so it doesn't fall into that camp, right? Like, so it's like, I can't, like, using the term self-care, could be perceived as like, well, we're a business, we're here to make money. Self-care, that's something somebody does, on their own. But instead of using the term self-care, using the term, work-life balance, or
Oh, that makes
having a
sense.
compelling, like, a compelling vision for employees to follow, or meeting employees where they're at, things that are a little bit less emotionally charged. I mean, that's just, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how I certainly have had to approach it in many of my organizations,
That
even
makes
though
sense.
it's the right thing to do, right? It's trying
Mhm.
to find that middle ground there.
I know. So yeah, I'm from the staffing side, sales side. So it's different perspective from my end, but I definitely see where you're coming from for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are rounding out the end of our time here, and I want to make sure, I'm really curious to hear your questions to the Rebel HR flash round. So,
All right.
all
Bring
right,
it on.
ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite people book?
Okay. Right now, I'm currently reading Influence Redefined by Stacey Hank. Hanke. Have you heard of that book?
I'm not familiar.
Ah, love it.
All right. Question number 2. Who should we be listening to?
Your podcast. I actually definitely want to listen to the one going over energy. So that is my next to do to listen to.
Sam Smeltzer. Yeah, I don't know the episode off the top of my head, but that was
I'm going to look up Sam.
that was really cool. It's funny because she has a podcast herself too, called the Heart of It, with HR art is the kind of
love
the title.
it.
So and she's got a ton of great content. But I still use. She has a technique that it's about visualizing a bubble so that negative energy doesn't like influence you.
I already like her.
I think about that on a really regular basis, especially when someone's coming into my office huffing and puffing, and it's actually a technique that, for whatever reason, it tends to work for me. So yeah, check it out.
I definitely will.
It's out there. So thank you for that. And last question here, the hardest hitting question of all: how can our listeners connect with you?
Yes, thank you. Well, we're on all the socials. Our website's missionrecruit.com, and Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, it's all Mission Recruit. And I hope to hear from everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating for me, something totally new that I've never really explored or heard about before, and that's what this podcast is all about. So thank you for bringing something new to us and to our listeners, and we'll have all that information in the show notes if anybody wants to learn more. Get connected to Patricia and her team, and learn a little bit more about human design.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you. All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.